Welcome to Where You're At, a podcast that highlights the work of alumni from the Journalism and Media Studies Department at San Diego State University. I'm Pete Frank Williams. Our goal is to share the success of alums, inspire current students with these stories, and connect students and alums for mentoring. And now, here's your host, Josh Suchon.
This week on Where You At, we are staying in San Diego, but we're taking a little drive up the coast to Carlsbad. We're going to discuss print journalism, broadcast journalism, and making the transition to public relations. Our guest this week is Tyra Wu. She's from the class of 2020, which means, yes, she graduated at the start of the pandemic and was trying to find a job and be a journalist right in the thick of the world shutting down. Tyra, it is wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really flattered to be included.
Well, when I saw your LinkedIn profile, I thought that you would just be a really good person for students to learn from because you have done print, you've done broadcasting, you're now in PR, you were a student athlete at one point. That's not easy to be a student athlete. You did a ton of work experience when you were a student. So there's a lot of different things that I think that current students can learn from you as they try to decide which part of communications is best for them. So if you don't mind, why don't we just start with your decision to go from being a reporter to working in public relations? What were some of the factors that led to it?
Sure. So like you talked about, I had a unique opportunity to work in the field when I was still in school. So I think that offered me a really good insight. So once I graduated, I already had some experience under my belt. So I knew a little bit more about where I wanted to go. So while I was at SDSU, I was interning at Fox 5 as a writer for the morning show. And then once I graduated, they offered me a position. So I was really lucky in that sense. I got to stay on there for a little bit and got to be a writer and then an assignment desk editor there as well. And it was super fun. I really, really enjoyed that experience. But eventually I realized that since that was my first job out of school, I really wanted to try other fields as well. So at the time I decided I wanted to broaden my experience and I looked into communications and PR and I ended up taking a job at the City of San Diego as a PIO.
And most recently, congratulations. At the time that we are recording this, you just started with a new position with the City of Carlsbad. Tell us about being the public information officer for the City of Carlsbad. What are the different duties that you have?
So at the City of Carlsbad, I'm working on a couple of different things, but part of it was mainly social media. So working on an overall social media strategy for them. They have a couple different channels that they've got going on right now, but they really want to expand their reach and get a lot more engagement from the people who live in Carlsbad and also use all the tools that social media affords. You know, it's a field that changes really quickly. So it's really important to have somebody dedicated to that position and to looking at social media as a whole. So that's something that I'm really excited to do for the City of Carlsbad. On top of that, I'm also working with a couple different departments. So Park and Rec is an example of them. Helping them really get the word out. They have a number of really great programs, whether it be for kids or seniors, things like that. So they really want to make sure that people in Carlsbad know what's available to them and what the city's offering.
For students who are trying to decide what path is best for them, what is your advice based on your experience on if you like doing this, then that, or if you don't like doing this, then maybe, what type of advice can you give to students as they try to find their path?
I think it's really important to get hands-on experience as soon as you can. I was super lucky to get that internship while I was in school. But I think the great thing about SDSU is that they really do offer a lot of opportunities for students to get out there in the world, in the field. For example, I also interned at KPBS during my time at SDSU. So that partnership is really important. And the fact that you have a class where you can, have an internship count toward your credits, toward the time that you're doing at SDSU, I think is a really great thing that the school does. It's one thing to learn about something in class and then realize once you're in the real world, like, oh, maybe I don't actually like this as much as I thought I would. So really getting to do it yourself, I think, is the biggest thing you can do for yourself.
Sometimes the hardest thing is just that first job, that first job interview, that first step out. And then every time it starts to get a little bit easier. Tell us about getting those first internships, about writing those letters or knocking on those doors and what it was like, whether it was scary or exhilarating or exciting, and basically how you got going with these opportunities.
Yeah, I think honestly, getting your foot in the door can be the hardest thing. Absolutely. Especially here in San Diego, there's a lot of people who are interested in journalism and there's a lot of different organizations. So it can be hard to know even where to start when you're a student. I would say try to apply to as many places as you can. I know that I was rejected by a lot of places, and don't let it get you down because that's just part of the process, honestly. But also, widen what you're looking at, widen the organizations that you have in mind. Because I think that there's a lot of great organizations in San Diego that you may not necessarily think of or come to mind immediately, but they have a lot of great opportunities for people who are interested in the field. When I interned at Fox 5, I actually interviewed once the year before and didn't get the position. And then I came back and I interviewed again. And so I think having that persistence and just being okay with not getting through the first time. And if that's something that you really want, just going back and trying again.
No, I'm glad that you said that because you just gave me a flashback about something that I used to do that I don't do anymore. And that is save rejection letters. I was actually going through a number of different things over the Christmas break because I had some time, and I forgot that I did this. I used to save all of the rejection letters that I got, and I don't know why I did. Maybe I'm much older. First of all, they don't send rejection letters anymore. Maybe you get a rejection email or something like that. Maybe I need to go through my email and start printing out more rejection letters. I don't know if I thought that it was going to be motivating for me, like I was going to tell them decades later, see, I proved you wrong or whatever. But it was actually really interesting to look at the different places that I applied all around the country back in the 90s and to see how they not so gently told me that I was not getting the job.
And it's kind of nice to know, like it's a universal experience. You're gonna get rejected no matter what. And it's nice to look back now and see, that's okay because that wasn't the path that was meant for you at the time, and eventually other things worked out. So that's funny that you say that. I know a lot of other people have had that experience too, where they keep them, and it's kind of like a reminder of where you've come from.
What is it that you miss about journalism, and what is it that you do not miss about journalism?
There's a lot of great things about journalism. Part of it is that every day it's different, and you don't know necessarily when you're walking in what you're going to be walking into, whether it's going to be a slow news day or if it's going to be, breaking news and all hands on deck. And for me, that was something that really drew me to news because I thought that was super exciting to have something completely different every day. So I do miss that element in PR now. I think also with that comes a sense of teamwork and camaraderie with your coworkers that you don't necessarily have in other places because you are in really stressful situations, working strange hours with each other. And, you just develop a friendship that maybe you don't in other workplaces. So I think that's really great as well.
I know a number of different people who bounce back and forth between being a reporter and working in PR. And a good friend of mine who's also named Josh, he always knew that he wanted to work in public relations, but he wanted to have the experience of being a reporter. So he knows what it's like on deadline. He knows what it's like trying to get a story confirmed, that he could just understand all of that. And ultimately, I think it made him a much better communications director. I know people who have gone back and forth, who have gone like 2-3 times they've gone back and forth. And so I wanted to ask you how your experience as a reporter helps shape the decisions that you make now working in PR.
I think your friend is dead on. Like it gives me a great perspective on what the person on the other side is looking for, what kind of deadlines they're working with, what's the environment that it takes for them to actually go from pitching a story to actually getting it on air or on print. So I think it's a really valuable experience, and it definitely shapes the way that I approach the stories that I pitch now, whether it be for, the City of Carlsbad's Park and Recreation Department or whatever it is. I always keep that in mind. What is the reporter thinking? What's the pitch for them? So I think it's a really valuable experience to have that. And the other thing that I wanted to add is I think that SDSU, one of the great benefits of SDSU is that there are a lot of professors who are, working journalists. They're in the field right now. And I think that's super valuable, especially because journalism is changing so fast. So having someone who's not just, 20 years ago, back in my day or whatever it is, like they have that experience. They're in the field right now. So they can tell you, this is what we do every day right now. So I think that's great.
Yeah, no, I echo that. That's really good because, a lot of times students will ask me, or someone that's just out of college, like, hey, what did you do so that they could maybe follow my path? And I tell them, well, don't follow my path because mine's crazy, because I've bounced all around. I've gone from print to working for a team, to working for a radio station, to working for a team again. And the thing that I tell people all the time is that sometimes you don't get to pick. Sometimes the industry picks you. Like now I work for a minor league baseball team and I do play-by-play. And this is what I always wanted to do since I was about 10 or 12 years old. But, and a lot of times I sit there and think, man, I wish I could have just done this from day one, from the day that I left San Diego State. But that doesn't always happen. You don't always get those jobs. And that's why I saved those rejection letters. And so I think I more than exhausted the amount of time that I could spend living with my parents. At a certain point, you just have to take some job, any job, and you just have to take the job that's available to you. And I guess my message to students would be, you just never know what your path is going to be. And you can create your path, but sometimes your path gets created for you. And sometimes that can be really frustrating. It can be really humbling, and it can be really easy to look at what other people were doing and say, well, why couldn't I do that? I even caught myself doing that a couple of days ago. And a good friend reminded me, like, your path is different. Your path is okay. So maybe you can just speak to, just the idea that there's only so many of these jobs, and we'd love to say that's my dream job and here it is, but that rarely happens.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is really true. And from when I talk to other people who are in this field, everyone has kind of a similar story, right? They perhaps had this idea of like, I'm going to go work for this place when I graduate, but the path to get there is often, it has more twists and turns than you may think. And I think I also had a similar story in that I kind of had this idea of like, I want to work for a certain place when I graduate. And that was kind of what I fixated on. But I never even thought when I was in school, like someday I'm going to work for, a local government or something like that. That wasn't even on my radar. But now I do, and I do really enjoy my work. And so it's nice, I think, and important to have an open mind when you're looking for jobs, because you may think that there is something out there that's perfect for you and that's the only thing that you want. But if you expand your reach and keep your mind open, you may find that there are a lot more opportunities that could be really fulfilling and really use your skills really well.
The other thing too is that sometimes you're just not ready for a job. You're not good enough for a job. When I found those rejection letters, I also found samples of my work when I was at San Diego State. I remember thinking, man, I am so good at this. Look at me. I should just get any job. And then I listened back to some of it and I was cringing. Oh my goodness. I was not as good as I thought I was. And, there's this great line that, you don't get the job that you want, you get the job that you deserve. And truthfully, I wasn't ready for those jobs. I didn't have the voice. I didn't have the talent. I guess it's debatable whether or not I have that now, but, I think that being self-critical about what you can and can't do at a certain stage of your life becomes important too.
Yeah. And really allowing for the unexpected. I think another great thing about San Diego and working in this industry is that there are so many people who know each other or have worked with each other in the past. And so even if you're taking an opportunity that may not be your dream job, you don't know who you're going to meet or who they might know or who they could connect you with later on. So those experiences, I think, are really important as well.
Let's talk a little bit more about your experience at San Diego State. You mentioned, a number of different professors that were really helpful for you. What are some of your just most cherished memories of going to school at SDSU?
The thing that really drew me to SDSU is I knew that I wanted to really get hands-on experience in journalism. And I loved that when I had classes, we were out there, reporting on things in our community. They really encouraged us to be involved and write stories that reflected what's going on at SDSU and the broader San Diego community. So that's something that I liked doing from the get-go. And like I said before, I loved having professors who were in the field. So for example, Professor Dana Littlefield, she was working at the UT at the time. And so she would come in, our class was in the evenings. And so she would come in right after work and she would tell us, this is what we did today working in the field. And so I loved that. I thought that was super cool versus someone who was removed from the industry itself. Other than that, living in San Diego is amazing. So I loved that. I got to do that at SDSU. That's always a perk.
I was just talking to somebody yesterday, the day before we recorded this, and we were talking about San Diego, and I told them about how there was one year in the fall semester that my friends and I wanted to see how many days in a row we could wear shorts before we had to put on pants at the start of the year. And so, school started whatever it was, late August or early September, and then we'd get into October and still we had our streak going of how many days in a row that we wore shorts, and I had one friend who wore shorts and he pulled his socks up to his knees so that because it started to get cold. But yes, that was the benefit and beauty of going to school in San Diego.
Yeah, that's a very San Diego thing to do. It's funny that you say that. That reminds me. So I forget which class it was, but it was one of the capstone classes, I believe, that they encouraged us to basically create like a multimedia project about any topic that interests us. So at the time I had just started getting into surfing. So I basically got to create this whole multimedia project all about surfing, and basically what it meant is that I got to go surfing with my friends and take videos of it. So things like that. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. So
it's time for a quick break from this week's podcast. I'm Amy J. Smith from the class of '98, and I'm a voiceover artist based in Los Angeles. I'm available for film narration, radio and TV commercials, documentaries, how-to explainer videos, and much more. You can contact me at amyvo.com. And now, back to this week's podcast. Here's Josh.
Okay, so you just brought that up, and that leads to me a question that I'd almost forgotten that I was going to ask you, which is advice that you would give to your younger self. And while you're thinking about that, I want to give the advice that I would give to my younger self if I could, because when I look back on my time at San Diego State, my biggest regrets, number one, I took Spanish because I had to. I did enough in those classes to move on. But now working in baseball, where there's so many Spanish-speaking players, I wish that I would have taken the Spanish classes as seriously as I took my journalism classes, because I know a little bit of Spanish, I can get by with our players, but if I was bilingual, what a difference that would make to help everybody. And so that's my number one regret. And then my number two regret is that I did not take surfing. I could have taken a surfing class. I could have gotten credit. I had a hard enough time making it to a classroom at 8 a.m. and the idea of being in Mission Bay at 7 a.m. in the water. I just was not able to wrap my head around that I could actually do this. But I would say those are my two biggest regrets. I didn't take Spanish seriously enough, and I did not take surfing. And I could have learned how to surf and gotten class credit.
That's funny that you say that, because I also took Spanish, and I passed the class, but I can't speak Spanish now. So I think that says a lot about how dialed in I was at the time for that. But you're right. Like, it would have been so helpful, just being in Southern California, having that tool. So I think that's one of my regrets too.
All right. What about just advice to your younger self? Because again, you had an interesting collegiate experience, right? You started off as a student athlete. You were at Smith College, then you came back to San Diego where you grew up. What's some of the advice that you would give yourself if you were talking to yourself as a high school senior?
At the time, I was super focused on, I knew that I wanted to be in journalism. So I focused all of my classes on that. And those were my internships as well. So I spent a lot of time in that field. And I mean, it was ultimately really beneficial because I did have a job lined up for me right after I graduated. But I think, taking advantage of the wide range of classes that SDSU allows, one of the few ones that I took that was outside of that realm was actually a surfing class. It was surfing, like sociology of surfing or something like that.
Ooh,
and
I like that.
It was such a cool class, and also very San Diego. But I also think that, having that wide range of experiences and knowledge is really helpful as a journalist. And I'm sure you can relate to that as well. It's important to have the technical skills, but you never know what you're going to be reporting on. And it could be a wide range of things. So having a wide range of knowledge, I think, would be really nice.
I remember seeing this cartoon when I was in college, and it was a dartboard, and a journalist was getting ready to throw a dart, and above it said, "Today I'm an expert at," and so for that dart landed on, that's what you're an expert at for the day. And I remember that resonating to me and thinking, okay, this is what it means to be a journalist, is that I need to quickly become an expert at this. But what I've also found is that so many people in our society think that they're an expert about something, that it actually disarms people when you tell them, I don't know about this. Help me learn this. Make me understand this. Why is this important to you? What do I not know that I need to know? And people get so disarmed when you ask questions like that they really open up. And whatever, I feel like whatever like guards that they might have up are just like, oh, okay. and now they want to help explain it to you so that you can become an expert for the day. And I'm wondering just what, kind of like your experiences with this idea of it's okay to admit that I don't know this so that someone can help me learn this.
I've also had the same experience with that. And I think it's something that they do that actually in class we had talked about, if you don't know something, don't pretend that you know it. And also, really leave space for people to say what they want to say. Like we were talking about interview skills and things like that in our classes. And we would often ask, like, at the very end, just ask somebody, is there anything else that you want to add that we haven't covered? And allowing space for the people to speak and add things that, you may not have even asked or thought to ask during the interview. So coming in with an open mind about that, I think is really important. For me, that was a big draw to journalism too, is that I never had to choose one specific thing to focus on, because to me, there are so many things that I find interesting in the world. So I loved that I could every day put a different hat on, and today I'm going to learn about this, and the next day maybe something totally different. So that was something that was a big appeal to me in getting into journalism. So when I got the chance to be a reporter and a writer for some local newspapers in San Diego, I always tried to set the stage for people to really educate me and never really come in as assuming that I would be the expert in anything.
That question's so great for indie interviews. Like what else? What else should I be asking you? Or is there anything else that you think is important? Another one of my favorite questions is, tell me more. There's this really good documentary about this longtime reporter and editor at Rolling Stone magazine, and I'm totally forgetting his name. Most people know him as the editor from Almost Famous, who's talking to the lead character. And they did, I think it was on Hulu, they did this really good documentary about him. And that's his favorite. It's not even a question. It's like, really, tell me more. Because I think that a lot of times when you start talking, you get self-conscious. Oh, I've been talking for a while, I should probably shut up. And then when the interviewer says, that's really interesting, tell me more, it's like this license to just keep going. And I think it's just such a great, even though I'm a believer in ask questions, who, what, where, when, why, how, describe, but that's so simple. Tell me more, and what that can lead to, and where that conversation can go in getting a story.
Yeah. Kind of like what we're talking about, leaving space for the unexpected. You can plan a whole interview out and, these are all the questions I'm going to ask from A to Z, but you never know what someone else may have to say. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of the people that I did interview, they really were just so happy to be talking about a subject that they were interested in or they were passionate about. And so when you ask questions like that and show genuine interest as a person, the doors kind of come wide open and you have no idea what they're going to say, but oftentimes it's something really great that you never expected.
Well, especially in some of those stories right after you graduated or in lockdown or partial lockdown, and you're doing so many interviews over Zoom and over the phone. Describe for us the challenges of what it was like leaving school, starting the job market when the world was totally different.
I think I was pretty lucky in the sense that I was already working in the field at the time, because I was at Fox 5 as an intern, and then I was able to secure a job right after I graduated. So I know that I'm really lucky in that sense, because I know not everyone had that opportunity. But at the same time, it was a very scary time because, we didn't really know what was going on. And for us, we were considered essential workers working at the news station. So we were still going to work when everyone else was locked down completely. But I think it was a great learning experience for me to see, when it's all hands on deck, really stressful situation, how everyone came together at the news station. And I really enjoyed that because there was a huge sense of camaraderie and teamwork being there every day during an emergency like that.
All right, we're going to wrap things up here fairly quickly, but a couple more topics I want to get to. One is, how do we find your work? I know that it's not necessarily a byline when you work for the City of Carlsbad, but how can we, some of the stuff that you described, how do we find your work and learn from you and see it?
If you want to see what I'm doing for the City of Carlsbad right now, you can definitely follow their social media channels on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. For me personally, I have a lot of things on my LinkedIn, things that I've done in the past, including things that I did at SDSU that I'm so proud of. So if you want to take a look, feel free.
And if students want to contact you and learn more from you, or maybe find out about potential internships and things like that, what should they do?
Also, on LinkedIn would be a great way to message me. I am active on there, and I'm really happy to talk to anyone who is looking for advice or wants to know a little bit more about working in the journalism industry in San Diego. Like I said, it's a small world, so a lot of people know each other. So I'm happy to connect people with where they want to go.
Okay, final topic. I'm trying to make this a theme in that we have that whoever comes on, I want them to brag about another San Diego State student. It can be someone who was a classmate of yours or someone who was not a classmate of yours. We want to just continue to just kind of get the word out about what students are doing. That's the whole point of the name, Where You At. We want to tell people where people are at. If you're ready, go ahead. If not, I'll do mine this week. But if you're ready, go ahead, Tyra.
Sure. It's funny that you say this because when you reached out to me via email, immediately I already thought of this person and I was going to email you and say, hey, you got to talk to her. So it's great that you're asking this. But her name's Allison Norwood. She's the marketing manager for a hotel in Oceanside. She was previously working for Visit Oceanside, so in the PR space. She's super, super great at what she does. And we were interns together at KPBS. So that's how we know each other. But highly recommend talking to her. She was on top of her stuff when she was at KPBS, and I know she is now. So she'd be a great person to talk to.
All right, outstanding. For mine this week, it's someone who I'm pausing here so that I can call up her LinkedIn, so I make sure that I get her details right. It's actually a name that I remember reading about when she got her current new job, but I didn't realize that she went to San Diego State. Her name is Morgan Rubin, and she was recently hired within the past 6 months or so by the National Football League. She's the communications director for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Based on her LinkedIn, it looks like that she moved from San Diego to New York around 2014, 2015. She worked for New York City. She worked as a public advocate, press secretary. She worked for the office of the New York State Attorney General. And again, she was hired about 6 months ago by the NFL to be the diversity, equity, and inclusion communications director. I remember reading about her and seeing that this job and not knowing that she was an alum of San Diego State. And I just learned yesterday that she's an alum of San Diego State. So congratulations, Morgan Rubin. She's killing it out in New York.
That's amazing to hear. Congrats, Morgan.
All right. Anything else since we discussed earlier that's a really good way to enter anything else that I should have asked you or that you want students to learn, to know and learn about this industry?
Kind of like what we were talking about before. I think it's now in the industry, no one's just a print journalist. No one's just a TV news journalist. We're all kind of doing a little bit of everything. And so just try to make the most of the opportunities that SDSU has to learn all that you can and get that hands-on experience. And really make use of that network, because like I said before, a lot of the professors are people who are really connected and in the know. Another person, I'm just going to sneak this in, but Jerry McCormick is a professor at SDSU, and was also one of my former colleagues at the City of San Diego. So another really great person to know. He knows basically everyone, I think, in San Diego. So if you're looking for a job, talk to him. He'll help you out.
Say his name again, because you started to giggle when you started to say his name.
Jerry McCormick.
Jerry McCormick. Okay. Shout out to Jerry McCormick. All right, Tyra, this was super fun. I'm glad that we got to meet through Zoom. It was great getting to know you. I hope we can stay connected. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Once again, this is the Where You At podcast. We're celebrating the careers of San Diego State alums, and we're trying to connect alums to current students. So if you're an alumni and you're listening, get in touch with me, get in touch with Temple Northrop. You can donate your time. You can donate your money. They'll definitely take your money. You can be a guest speaker via Zoom. You can be a guest speaker in person. Get involved in the university, give back, continue to pay it forward. And students, I hope you're learning from these stories and that you can connect with some of the people that you're hearing from, and that it just inspires you to find your path as well. My name is Josh Suchon. I'm your host. We will talk to you again next week. This is Where You At.
Thanks for listening to the Where You At podcast. This is Amy J. Smith from the class of 98. Thanks to Martine Marine for creating the music you're hearing right now, and Alex Piscatelli for her work on the podcast name and the artwork on social media. And a reminder to SDSU alums, we really want to know, where you at? Tell us about your career. Get involved in the department. You can donate your time or your money. You can mentor students. You can speak in the classroom, in person or Zoom. You can provide internship opportunities to students. Help us grow the department. Again, thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. Recommend us a future guest. And go Aztecs!